Good morning. You know, when I drive over here from the house, it's about a 20-minute drive. And so it gives me a chance to, on Sunday mornings anyway, listen to TED Talks or NPR. And this morning, I listened to a couple of interesting programs, and I just wanted to share a little bit, which actually led me into the idea of having the Let's Talk segment, which just totally bombed. So I'm going to bring this back in a little bit. So I'm going to talk, okay, instead of let's talk. You can think and I'll talk, okay. One of the conversations had to do with what's called neuroaesthetics, which just really, caught my attention because I've always been interested in the brain and have read and studied a lot about the brain. And so they were talking about, we had a neuroscientist and then a philosopher, and they were really at odds with one another about the whole concept of neuroaesthetics. And the idea of neuroaesthetics is to take a image of the brain, which is, via an MRI, I guess, and have that person looking at a piece of art, having the client or the patient looking at a piece of art, and then to see what triggers certain parts of the brain that makes them responsive to different types of artwork or reactive to different types of artwork. And then the neuroscientist, was very excited about this. The philosopher said, I don't see the point. But I thought, well, from a layman's point of view, it would be very interesting to see how the brain, different types of brains respond to different types of art, and so forth. So that was one subject matter. And the other, I just got in the tail end of it, where a teacher was talking about 5 different points in regard to the importance of teachers and what they're doing now to educate themselves, and how important it is to have qualified teachers. And she was referencing mostly teachers in other countries, not necessarily in this country. But she mentioned how the architecture of schools still is based on an early 1900 prototype, and how that's not sufficient in today's world. And she qualified that by saying how in the old days, a student would go from one classroom and kind of get their hands stamped that they had attended, and 45 minutes later they walk down the hall and go into the next classroom, and for 45 minutes, they get their hands stamped and leave, and so forth. Whereas in today's, the more modern architecture, which is just in the process of being designed, is based on collaboration. And the idea, what triggered me was when my kid's father, he was a teacher, and in the junior high school system, he was there for a while, and they developed the idea of team teaching. And it was quite remarkable. And he was a scientist, so the science teachers would get together and they would share their field of expertise, and his field was geology. And so he would talk to some of the teachers who would then share their ideas with their particular field of expertise, and then they would divide their classes up, and they would each go in to the various teaching, classes and share their knowledge. And sometimes then like 3 or 4 teachers would get together and share their independent fields, but then would synthesize them and bring them together, in science. So that's leading me into this morning's talk, which is on group magnetism. This is part 2. And I was thinking about the old form of groups and the new form of groups. the old form of groups was really just like a half step toward true group consciousness. Because as people were pulled into a particular group or groupings of individuals, they still individualize themselves as one entity that became very self-centered, very egotistical. We're the best of all the other groups. And the result of that kind of thinking was lacking collaboration, lacking synthesis, lacking recognition of the talents and the different, we could even say, ray groupings of other types of group entities, let's call it. So now what is happening, certain people, souls, let's say, are being born into incarnation having already constructed an understanding of true group, not the individual grouping of the past, but synthetic groupings of the future. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I think this is already happening. I'm working with some groups that I'm very, very excited about, where true collaboration is taking place, where there is team leadership, which is what we do here in White Mountain. We have a team of leaders, and then these leaders begin to work with the whole of the grouping. And then they're reaching out to synthesize their work with the function and talents and energies of groups around the world. This, to me, is the future, and it's not easy to do. Why is it not easy to do? Because there are only seemingly a limited number of individuals that are born as souls into functioning as a true synthetic group. Let's call it that, a true synthetic group. As a comparison, actually this isn't that good of a comparison, but I was thinking also how I've noticed just from my little grandkids that they're born with devices in their hands. The elder gives the grandkid, their iPhone or their smartphones. Can you whatever they do to make it work, or the iPad. I'm always going to somebody, can you do this for my iPad? I can't figure it out. And the little ones, they just know. So they're born into the recognition of an understanding of technology. So taking that crazy idea and juxtaposing it with the idea of certain souls coming into incarnation now that are going to take the idea of group synthesis into the future, truly into the Aquarian age, is what I'm going to be talking about this morning. But to recognize that it is hard. I mean, I know it's hard. It's very, very difficult. It's difficult because you have to find like-minded people. Like-minded means that they're not. They don't have a personality that's imbued with a sense of self-importance. They have humility. They recognize the power of collaboration, the power of integration, and the power of synthesis. But we're headed in that direction. I really believe that, and because this is what we're trying to do as a group. So, now, having said all this, I'm going to go into my talk, my notes, which is group magnetism. For a group to become magnetic, the hearts of the group must be united. So there's our first challenge. See, we've come from the whole movement, the whole process of involution, now moving into evolution, and part of our consciousness still has that old, what can we call it, that old reptilian brain, which is survival of the fittest, right? Look out for number one. It's very interesting. I'm not going to get to the end of this talk. I just, why is it? Well, I also was watching a little bit of Fareed this morning. I didn't get anything done except to listen and watch. Anyway, he was interviewing a SEAL, a member of a SEAL team. He's now retired, but they were talking about Iran and what he thought about, the president's admonition of Iran. But he was talking, Fareed was asking him what made him join the SEAL team, because as we know, these are unique individuals that are totally fearless and very other-oriented. And he said, that's what makes them fearless. He said, we don't think about ourselves. We think about the person on the right side and the person on the left side of us, that we want to protect them. And he said, our strong inherent nature to protect others is what keeps us fearless. So even a member of the SEAL team, which I always see as so strong and powerful and masculine in their desire to protect, they have heart because they're connected in such a way that they're there to protect others, to protect all of it. Well, that also must play a part into group magnetism. So, repeating here that for a group to become magnetic, the hearts of the members must be united. So it takes training, it takes education, it takes experience. When the hearts of the group are united, they can enter into, then they can enter into the path of group magnetism. To enter into the path of group magnetism, what does this mean? It means that not only the individual members of the group, but the group itself will enter into a greater level of success, of prosperity, of health, and happiness. Success, prosperity, health, and happiness. So, to do this, to enter into the path of group magnetism, it means to be engaged in service. Engaged in service. A united group will attract solar energy. So we have to think about what does solar energy mean? Does this mean to take our towels out in the front yard and sunbathe? Well, no. So what does solar energy mean? It means soul energy. And that can be even further broken down to understand that soul energy is energy that radiates from the higher mind, the higher self. So, again, a united group will attract soul energy or solar energy. And for us, our understanding is we're talking about hierarchy. The energy of hierarchy, the energy of the ashrams of hierarchy. This energy will magnetize the heart of the group with a vision and with a plan. Magnetic energy, what does it do? There are certain things that magnetic energy does do as it begins to circulate within the sphere of the group and the consciousness of the group. And one of those activities is transformation. It begins a process that puts the members underneath into the experience of transformation. So transformation is a process through which the capacity of the members of a magnetic group receive energy. So we begin to receive energy, right? And you can feel that energy. The sensitive person is going to feel that energy. As we receive this energy, our ability to be inspired increases. This means we are then going to be able to be more receptive to higher impressions, and that receptivity increases. So we become increasingly receptive to higher impression. The capacity to assimilate these energies also increases. The capacity to create on many levels, not just one level, but many levels, also increases. Thus, as the transformation process goes on, the capacity of the consciousness of the group responds to the demands and needs of the environment, and their response increases as the need increases. Receptivity of energy is possible if the core of the group, and every true magnetic integrated group has a core. The core of the group must have the capacity to respond. Assimilation is possible if the whole of the group has the capacity to expand. So the core is responding, and the whole capacity of the group is expanding. Respond and expand. Respond and expand. Transformation, and this is important, if you're taking notes, take this. Transformation is a change from motion. It's a change from motion to rhythm. A change from motion to rhythm. So what is motion? It's action. It can be chaos, a chaotic action. It can be flitting from here to here to here to here, and so forth. Motion will make the group unstable. It's like new people come into the group and they bring their 35 dozen titles of books and say, why aren't you studying all of these books? No. We're going to be focused on what? On the rhythm of a particular teaching. So that sometimes then causes people to leave, other times causes them to give all those books away and to focus on one path or one stream or one rhythm developed by a particular teaching. If it is a true teaching, that teaching will be all-inclusive and advanced. In other words, it will not be stuck in the past, and it will not isolate itself from truth. So it's all-inclusive. Transformation then takes the members of the group from inertia to motion, and from motion to the sphere of rhythm. From inertia to motion, from motion to the sphere of rhythm. What is rhythm? In this case, it's the rhythm of evolutionary currents. Think about this, evolutionary currents. If we are in rhythm with the outpouring, changing of plans of hierarchy and Shambhala, then this means that such a group will be in continuous transformation, continuous receptivity, continuous change. But that change, that transformation will be in rhythm with the evolutionary currents being given to us, coming to us like a river of currents from hierarchy and from Shambhala and greater spheres, if we can even imagine. The result is that as the members of the group go closer to the rhythm, the evolutionary currents, then the body of the group receives more nourishment from higher spheres, from the constructive and creative forces of the universe. This means we have to be ready to assimilate, to respond, and in that assimilation and response, we then take the energy in a creative manner according to our level of consciousness and put it into expression. Rhythm brings a magnetic group closer to the sun, closer to the soul of the group. The group soul eventually brings the group into existence as a vital living soul. A vital, that's a key word, is a vital living soul. Then the group becomes a transmitter of light through the work, through the service that they are engaged in. They transmit light. The physical, emotional, mental body of the group becomes more fiery, more spirit and less matter. Now, there are certain reasons for repulsion of such groups. If the group has members who are steeped in inertia, such members eventually become repulsed from the group. If they are steeped in inertia, such members eventually become repulsed from the group. The reason is because inertia works against the direction of the person's spirit, and in this case, against the vision of the group labor. If a person is not magnetized with the teaching of hierarchy or with the vision and plan of the group, that person may come in to the group energy, group environment for a few years to gain knowledge, but they will not participate in the labor of the group and will eventually leave. History has proven this. Facts. Another reason a person will leave a magnetized group is that they have not yet assimilated the teaching, and as a result, they have not changed their level of beingness. As we gradually assimilate the energy of the teaching, we begin to change our level of beingness. We begin to strive to make conscious changes in our life. So magnetism plus striving causes transformation. Magnetism plus striving causes transformation. Each step of striving takes us closer into the magnetic center of the group, the sun, the core, the nucleus. Eventually, through fire by friction, we become part of the heart of the group. So it takes a while. It takes a while for this to happen. Eventually, the person's life reflects the rhythm of the evolutionary currents of the group soul. The member who is continuously striving and implementing spiritual disciplines for their physical, emotional, and mental and spiritual bodies, they are also receiving nourishment from the nucleus of the group. The one who is reading only, who is increasing only their knowledge, will for a period of time be able to comfortably handle that group energy and be excited and stimulated by the group energy. But eventually it's going to cause them problems. Why? Because that energy is psychic energy. And the psychic energy of the teaching is not discriminating. It is inherently and naturally transforming. So if the person doesn't want to undergo that whole amazing, incredible, long path of transformation, they're going to leave. The test for each member is to make good use of the magnetic radiatory energy to change themselves, to make them ready to serve the plan of the group, which is an aspect of the plan of hierarchy. The members' capacity to receive energies is now increasing, such as their ability to become inspired and to receive higher impression, which will result in creative labor. It is the creative energy which is going to strengthen the group work. Unless a person undergoes the initiation of transfiguration, their contact with the higher spheres is through the nucleus of the group until they go through the initiation of transfiguration. For it is naturally through the law of attraction, drawing them closer into the fire of the group's leadership and the group soul, which means that it's inevitable if the members of the group continue to strive and labor, continue to serve, continue to practice the disciplines of the group, it's inherent that they will eventually be drawn into the realm of, or the field that ignites the process of transfiguration, the transfiguration initiation. As you strive, as you undergo the process of transformation, a molecular change is taking place within your consciousness, the consciousness of your atomic structure. And you are eventually either drawn into the nucleus, the core of the group, or you are repelled. If you are drawn into the fiery furnace of the nucleus of the group, the fiery rays of the sun, in this or future incarnation, you become transfigured in service to God, the kingdom of God. So how do such groups function? The first is through contribution. The first thing is that every group member, if they have the consciousness of the nucleus of the group, they must bring something or will bring something to contribute to the group, to give to the group. Artistic talents, leadership talents, scientific talents, philosophical talents, business talents, and so forth. All these talents make the group magnetism stronger and more powerful. So the first thing you're going to think about is, what do you have to contribute to the group? Your talents, your money, or your land. If your group is a legal entity, have you put that group into your will? Something as simple as that. Have you put it into your will? There is so much we as a member need to think about, and how we're going to make the group more successful and more creative and more powerful. One day a person said to me, "What is wrong with this group? If I didn't contribute money to it, it wouldn't survive. It wouldn't survive without our money. Everyone needs to learn how to make money, just as I have learned." Well, you see, his contribution to the group was money. But his ego, his vanity, blinded him. He saw the group lesser than himself, as if it were flawed. He was unable to see the many talents that were being contributed to the group, the sacrificial labor, the volunteerism, the time and energy the members of the group freely gave. He could see only what he contributed. When you start to contribute, something happens to you that never happens otherwise. Your inner reality reveals itself as you exhaust the things that are hiding it. For example, let us say that you have an attachment to something and you give it to the group. When you start giving it, you take away the blockage that is forcing you to keep things that you could give. This makes you freer of all those things which are making a blockage for you. When you give this away, the blockage is removed, and your spirit of generosity, of sacrifice, comes into manifestation. Giving, contributing, does not mean that you are always going to give and never receive. You are going to find a balance in giving and receiving. If you always take and never give, your accounting will never be balanced. So it is in givingness that makes you manifest your inner divinity. Oh, I could talk for a whole seminar on this, but I won't. Oh, that's weird. In groups, we learn tolerance. Weird because there's a microphone sound. Watching this on YouTube, you're going to wonder, what is she talking about? Well, there was a feedback sound here. So in groups, we learn tolerance. It is very important to learn tolerance. Many things happen. These things stimulate our anger, our personal expectations, our glamours, and our illusions, and they irritate us. Then we start hating each other, and this leads to creating separatism within the group. We have little pockets, of groupies. It is natural to see each other's shortcomings, weaknesses, and stupidities, but to be tolerant and keep the friendship. This is why a group is called a group, because it has discipline and it's practicing living ethics. Number 3, if you are assimilating the teaching and allowing a transformation to take place, the group energy will evoke within you a tendency, a power to control your thoughts, your words, and action. If you are assimilating the teaching, you see the example of others and something clicks within you and you become inspired. And that something that clicks within you is the current of energy carried by the members of the striving group. Harmlessness is the 4th. It is very important by learning harmlessness that you increase the magnetism, the power of the group. Harmlessness means that you in no way make people suffer or feel painful. It is really difficult to be harmless because your behaviors and your thoughts, your emotions, your anger, your fear, your hatred, your jealousies, your malice, or even your laziness or your lack of punctuality is harmful to the group field. Are you causing some kind of friction, the pain and suffering, or delay in the progress of the group? So we learn these things in the first few years or more in the progress of the group. And of course, we're going to make, and we have made, a lot of mistakes. One day, Christ was dining with the Pharisees, who had a bad reputation as hypnotists and such. His disciples were shocked because he was dining with the Pharisees. The disciples said, "Don't you know how bad these people are?" He answered, "Well, I have a question for you. If a doctor for healthy people, is a doctor for healthy people or for sick people?" They said, "A doctor is for sick people." Here I am. Christ said. So we are here to cure our sicknesses, to see each other in the light of the group purpose, and eventually to learn harmlessness. So first, you do lots of harm. Then you begin to stop it, and you find your energy increases the hidden weaknesses. They come to the surface, and you become even more harmful than before. This is another phase. In this phase, you are going to control yourself and see what is happening to you. When you are overstimulated by the magnetism of the group, by the teaching or the teacher, you're going to have very little chance to control the obnoxiousness that's hidden in your heart. That is why we say that in the group, people are exposed to the highest degree. But there is something beautiful here. It is a teaching, and it is a teaching that helps us to control this energy. And finally, number 5, sacrificial service. We learn sacrificial service in the group. I'm not going to talk about sacrificial service, but just think about this. If you have all the books in the teaching that Agni Yoga provides and Torquem Saradarian provides, you're going to be able to open every single book and go into the index, go down to where it says sacrificial service, or it'll start with service and then sacrifice. Okay, and learn more and more and more about what it is so that we can put it into the group field. There is another and even higher level of the practice of group consciousness. Once that group is created and is a true group, as I've been explaining it today and the last time. And it's called Peloria. Peloria is the full union of consciousness linked together by the silver threads of the core of the group. Let me repeat that. It is the full union of consciousness linked together by the silver threads of the core of the group. There are 3 elements necessary to achieve Peloria. Those elements are heart. That's number 1. The second is hierarchy. So we have heart as 1, hierarchy as 2, and number 3 is the realization of non-separateness. The realization of non-separateness. This is tough. Why? Because we still have ego and vanity, which is the ancient remnants of the past, including the Piscean age. So we have to eliminate and eradicate all those fragments that we keep bringing in to our day-to-day experience, into the group experience, and that higher energy, if we're receptive to it, then begins to eliminate those fragments. And it can be painful. It's painful only if you don't recognize the goal, the realization of non-separateness. So these elements must be present for a group to practice Peloria. Peloria is a state of being in which the members of the group consciousness exists simultaneously with the consciousness of other members. I'm going to repeat this. It's a lot of words. Peloria is a state of being in which the members of the group consciousness, the members of the group consciousness exist simultaneously with the consciousness of other members in a unified field of energy and a united awareness where the love is primary energy, out of which everything is made. You want me to repeat that again? Okay. Paloria is a state of being in which the members of the group consciousness exist simultaneously with the consciousness of other members. This existence takes place in a unified field of energy and a unified awareness where love is the primary energy out of which everything is made. So, love. You can go on to White Mountain's YouTube account. There's roughly about 300 to 400 lectures on there. And out of those lectures, you're going to see certain titles that relate to love. Learn what love is. There's a instinctive part of the soul that carries the frequency of love with it. And it's that instinct that must mature. The instinct initially is procreation, but we want to educate our soul in such a way that our experience of love matures. The spiritual experience of love matures. And it cannot happen in an isolated existence. It cannot happen in an isolated existence. You cannot go to the caves of the Himalayan mountains and sit there in that painful lotus position for 6 months and think that you are, there it goes again, we don't know what's happening, that we will develop that instinct into a universal love unless, and there's one exception, unless that yogi has built continuity of consciousness. In the construction of having a united consciousness with hierarchy, with Shambhala, with materia lucida, with the Fohadic energy, then what they're going to do, this is sacrificial service. They're no longer sitting in that painful yogic lotus position for themselves. They're there to flood the consciousness of humanity with a more mature frequency of love, a creative love, evolutionary love. Okay, so I'm going to close with a quote from the book Heart, which is a Agni Yoga book that's part of the series, and it's Heart 150, verse 150. The Master says, "If I say I am always with you, will many believe it? They would even fear to believe in the united consciousness." And that's really the key point I wanted to share this quote with. They would even fear to believe in the united consciousness. Why would you be afraid? Because your vanity says, I'm the only existence in the whole world, and I do not want to unite with any other existence. But you see how far we have come from that? Now we're moving into collaborative experiences. For them, the verse goes on, for them with such union is an intrusion upon their selfhood, and as such is entirely intolerable. They will never appreciate the tenfold multiplication of energy born of the cooperation of consciousness. But without such cooperation, the entire teaching of the heart would be impossible. Why all details if there cannot be mutual fortification? But if this principle is attainable, then its enlargement to the full union of consciousness, which is called polaria, is also possible. But then how greatly can the work of those who acknowledge and have attained the unification of consciousness be extended for the general good? Of course, I speak of the inner spiritual work, which the blind can neither perceive or appreciate. The summons to a unity of consciousness is necessary everywhere, because this is the simplest introduction into the life of the heart. This is not sorcery, but a physical law that can weave a salutary net around the planet. Thus, everyone who follows the law of being can justly consider himself as a citizen of the universe. There's a lot in that. Now we could go to part 3. But it isn't in the schedule, so you will just end with part 2.